All right, thank you so much for joining us for this breaking news on 24 Plus. I'm Ruben Diaz. After 5 days of deliberation, we believe a verdict is in the Memphis gynecologist case who's accused of healthcare fraud and reusing disposable medical devices. We're talking, of course, about the federal trial against Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. Now, this trial actually started in early December. It has taken a while to get to this point, and again, deliberations have been going on for 5 days. That includes the jury having to take a break during, for New Year's Eve. They did not go during New Year's Eve. They took that break from that Tuesday and then returned back on Monday and have since then been in deliberations since Monday trying to reach a verdict. It's important to note there are a lot of counts in this case. There are 46 counts that Dr. Sanjeev Kumar is facing, so that's a lot for a jury to decide and deliberate on. And we have gotten some updates from our reporter, Desmond Nugent, who's in the courtroom. He's been in the courtroom throughout this entire time. He's given us some information, some reports in the last few hours about kind of what's going on and what the status of things are. Let me read you a couple of the updates. We do know that they had been deliberating. They were curious about whether or not what their direction would be if they didn't reach decisions on a couple of these verdicts, on a couple of these charges. And the judge had told them basically to go in and continue to deliberate until they could get to a verdict. Now, there is information continuing to come back to us. As we continue to get it, then we will continue to bring it to you. But let's get you caught up on kind of where things are right now as we wait for those verdicts to come down. Right now, they've just entered the courtroom moments ago. The jury has been entering, the judge is entering, court is back in session, and they will begin to go through the proceedings of reading through those verdicts. But let's get you caught up on kind of what those verdicts look like at this point in time, like what those charges look like at this point in time. Dr. Kumar has been charged with, again, 16 counts of reusing single-use devices. Okay, so he's also been charged with 16 counts of rebranding reused single-use devices. He also has 4 counts of improper handling of medical equipment and 10 counts of healthcare fraud. Now, all that together equals into those 46 counts that he is currently facing in this federal trial. Let's take a look at kind of how we got here at this point in time and get you caught up on where we got to this point. In February, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar was charged with enticing patients to travel to his Memphis clinic to engage in unlawful sexual activities and reusing single-use devices, rebranding reused single-use devices, to use them again, and healthcare fraud. Again, some of those charges that I just mentioned. In April, a judge then allowed him to continue his practice under certain conditions, seeing if he used multi-use devices. He had a supervisor in the room during those exams to make sure that he was not reusing devices as he was already been charged with. He was also not allowed to treat children without court approval. Now, in October, the sexual charges were dismissed against Dr. Kumar, so those charges went away. That's when the federal trial began on December the 1st. Now, during the first week of the trial, federal prosecutors called 7 witnesses to the stand. A former assistant reported that she saw medical devices being soaked in cleaning solution and then reused. Another assistant testified that billing records from the clinic did not match the number of examinations that she remembered performing. One of the last witnesses to take the stand, again, this is all during the first week, was the deputy chief medical officer for TennCare. She claims that there were several violations in his clinic's records and that Medicare and Medicaid were being billed for procedures that patients did not receive. Now, a criminal defense attorney who was not involved in this case did give us, though, some insight on what could happen to Dr. Kumar's license if he is found guilty.
It may be a situation where we just give up his license and he'd be allowed in 5 or 10 years to come back and ask to be reinstated as part of a settlement with the medical board.
Defense pointed to the fact that Dr. Kumar is a specialist and said that that is why he's done so many operations on patients. The defense also claims that Dr. Kumar has been charged for things done by other staff members in the clinic, not by him personally. It's important to note we are still continuing to get updates as we get you caught up on what's going on. We do know that they are doing the reading of the verdict. There's a partial verdict being read right now. We don't have those details yet. As they come in, I'll begin to give those to you. But let's continue to get you caught on to where we're at now. Dr. Kumar's former assistant, Dr. Huda Aladdin Hussein, took the stand as well. She shared her experience working at the clinic while she was on that witness stand. She testified that work at Kumar's office was overwhelming, saying that the clinic would see anywhere from 20 to 70 patients in a single day. She also said that Dr. Kumar would push for more procedures and that her payments for work would be frozen when she didn't meet up to, quote, Dr. Kumar standards. Later, she clarified that that was not Kumar's sole reason for holding her payments. Now, we have been able, again, to continue to get you caught up on what exactly people have been saying and thinking and what the charges are when it comes to Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. And we've been able to even hear from some people during this point in time. Now, we actually have spoke with Corrine Oliver, who was a former patient of the doctor earlier this year. You could take a listen to what she had to say.
I cry every day, just devastated about what happened to me. And I just couldn't move forward. He gave me chemotherapy when I did not have any kind of cancer. And it nearly killed me.
All right, let's go back and continue to look at the charges, because this is what we're going to get to here in just a matter of minutes when they are officially released. Those charges, again, Dr. Kumar charged with 16 counts of reusing single-use devices. He's also charged with 16 counts of rebranding reused single-use devices. He also has 4 counts of improper handling of medical equipment and 10 counts of healthcare fraud. Again, those are the 46 counts that Dr. Sanjeev Kumar is facing right now in federal trial. According to LinkedIn, Dr. Kumar opened his clinic nearly 7 years ago. Before that, he worked as a gynecological oncologist at Baptist Memorial Healthcare. It's important to know that according to his indictment, everything he was accused of doing took place at his own clinic, which is Poplar Avenue Clinic Women's Health and Med Spa. Now, again, let's reset kind of where we're at and what we've been going through on this day. This is the 5th day of jury deliberations. It started as the 5th day of jury deliberations. At this point in time, we are being told that the jury has returned at least a partial verdict. This after having some questions over the last several days for the judge. I know at one point in time they did ask the judge if it would count as, what would happen if they couldn't reach a verdict on certain charges. They also asked, one juror also asked if he could take some of the evidence home to review. The judge denied that request and has asked them to continue to deliberate. We know they were trying to get out of in their days by roughly 5:30 to 6 o'clock every day. That's part of the reason probably why these deliberations has taken 5 days. They were, again, this all started several days ago, but because of the holiday break for New Year's, there were several days off in between during the time of this. Now, we are in the 5th day of deliberations at this point in time, and we are hearing that a verdict is coming in during these next few minutes. The jury is reading the partial verdict. Sorry, the judge is reading the partial verdict that the jury has given him at this point in time. Again, it's 46 counts. So it does take a little bit of time to go through all of those counts individually, because that's how they will be done. Now, again, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar is accused of healthcare fraud and reusing disposable medical devices while working at his clinic. The federal trial, again, started in early December, but has been going on until now, which at some point is making it one of the longer trials we've seen in a while. The jury deliberations have taken 5 days of that trial. And again, you have Christmas break and then you have the New Year's Eve break as well. Here's a look at just kind of a timeline for you to take a peek at while we continue to wait on this verdict. Right now, you can see the timeline of this is that February is when Dr. Sanjeev Kumar was charged. April, he was allowed to practice under certain conditions. One of those conditions was he could only see minors with court approval. In October, the sexual charges against him were dismissed. And then again in December was when the trial actually began. We are hearing updates from ABC 24's Desmond Nugent, who is in the courtroom right now. He says they are reading the partial verdict right now. It's a federal trial, which means that we cannot have cameras in the courtroom. And because of that, our reporter, our eyes and ears have to be in the courtroom, but then they have to come outside of the courtroom to deliver the information to us. So that's part of the reason why you're not hearing the verdict being read right now, why you're not in the courtroom itself listening to what's going on. What happens in a federal trial is we have to stay outside of the courtroom, typically outside, and then our reporter or our producers are able to be inside the courtroom taking the notes and getting the information. That's what Desmond Nugent is doing right now. He's inside the courtroom listening to this partial verdict being read, taking those notes, and then as soon as that verdict is read, he will join us live here on this stream to relay all of that information. Again, it's a lot of charges, 46 charges. So it does take a while to go through. If you've ever been through a court proceeding or witnessed or heard one before, it will be count one this, count two that, count three this, and that can take a while when you have 46. And so we will wait to hear from Desmond on exactly what we are hearing. We are hearing that Kumar has been found guilty on some counts. Now those counts are labeled 1 through 16 in our notes. We'd have to get some specification for you, some clarity on what those 1 through 16 charges are. Are they the misuse or rebranding? That'll be some clarification that we'll have to get before we deliver to you exactly what that is. But at this point in time, I can tell you there have been some guilty verdicts handed down already in this partial verdict that's being read. Again, this takes a while on 46 counts. But we could tell you, let's take another look at the charges that Dr. Kumar is facing, and we can start to break down some of this. We know that, again, from our reporter, Desmond Nugent, he has been found guilty on counts 1 through 16. We aren't sure which of those 16 those counts are. He does have 16 counts of reusing single-use devices and 16 counts of rebranding reused single-use devices. So not sure if those 16 guilty verdicts are which one of those sets of counts those belong to. Again, as Desmond is able to give us that information and join us live, then we'll be able to give you some clarity on which counts he has been found guilty on and which counts he may be found not guilty on. Again, after 5 days of deliberation, the jury is finally reaching at least a partial verdict in this case of Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, who's facing those 46 charges when it comes to his clinic on Poplar. So 16 counts right now, we are hearing he's been found guilty on at least 16 counts, but not clarification yet which counts those go to. If you've ever been involved in a court proceeding, those counts can come by pretty fast. It can be hard sometimes to keep track of, so we will clarify which counts he's been found guilty of and which ones he is not, so that we don't misspeak at this point in time. If we can get back to that timeline of events for Dr. Sanjeev Kumar and kind of help break down what happened and when this all started for Dr. Sanjeev Kumar and kind of when this all began. February is when this all really kind of started, is when he was charged initially in February. Now, he was charged with several counts, not just the medical device and the reusing and rebranding. He was also charged with some sexual charges as well. But in April, he was then allowed to continue his practice, but he had to have it under specific conditions. And there were several conditions set forth by the judge at that point in time. And then in October, it's important to note that all the sexual charges against him were dismissed. So the counts he's facing now, the charges he faces now are 1 through 16. 1 through 16 counts, 1 through 16 are adulteration of single-use devices. So it sounds like, as we continue to get clarity, that the reusing of the single-use devices, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar may have been found guilty on those. We're continuing, again, to get these updates in. This is live, so we're getting them in by the minute, and as we get them in, we will be able to give them to you. Again, with the timeline, in December, it's important to notice when the trial started. Now, you might be saying this has been a long trial. It has, but there's a lot of counts, a lot of witnesses. Dr. Sanjeev Kumar did take the stand as well in his own defense. It's important to note he was not cross-examined by the prosecution. His defense team felt strongly about that. They felt like that gave them some confidence that maybe that maybe the trial was going in their direction at that point in time, because the prosecution had chosen not to cross-examine Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. Again, let's go back to the charges that he's facing right now. As we're getting these words in, getting all of this information in by the moment, we're starting to learn what he might be getting charged with. I mean, what he might be being found guilty of at this point in time. Again, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar facing those 46 charges, those 46 counts in his federal trial that has finally come to an end. They are reading the partial verdict as we speak, but there are 46 counts, so it takes a while to get through all 46 of those. We do know that he has been found guilty on 16 counts. Those counts were counts 1 through 16, which was the alteration of single-use devices. Now, that is different from the 16 counts of rebranding reused single-use devices. So according to our Desmond Nugent, who's in the courtroom right now, he was found guilty on counts 1 through 16 of reusing single-use devices. He has also been found guilty, according to Desmond Nugent, of counts 17 through 32, which don't want to assume, but it sounds like those would be the 16 counts of rebranding reused single-use devices. So as we get some clarity on that, I will make sure that we get that information clarified and sent to you as well. But counts 1 through 16, which was reusing single-use devices, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar was found guilty of those 16 counts. It does appear that he was found guilty of the 16 counts of rebranding reused single-use devices. Important to note, those are two different sets of charges. Rebranding reused single-use devices is a different charge than the reusing single-use devices. But it appears to us from Desmond Nugent, who's in the courtroom, that he has been found guilty on all 32 of those counts. The first set of 16 and the second set of 16 at this point in time. Again, so we're still waiting to get word on the 4 counts of improper handling of medical equipment and the 10 counts of healthcare fraud as well. So there are still 14 counts that we are waiting to get the verdict on, the partial verdict on. But we can tell you, again, pardon my look as I look down, but counts 1 through 16 found guilty, counts 17 through 32, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar has been found guilty of those as well. That's 32 guilty verdicts so far in this case out of the 46 that he is facing, out of the 46 charges that he is facing. There you're taking a look at Dr. Sanjeev Kumar right now. Again, important to note that all of these charges come from his own practice, not from any of previous work he had done at any other sites or facilities. This is all from his current practice on Poplar. Again, the jury reaching a partial verdict in this with 32 guilty verdicts right now. 2 sets of the 16 counts have been returned as guilty verdicts. We are still waiting to get the last 14. Once we get the last 14 charges, once we get the verdict on those last 14 charges, we'll be able to bring you those as well. But we'll have to wait and hear from Desmond Nugent, who's in the courtroom. If you're wondering why you aren't seeing this happening live in real time, like maybe you do in other court cases, it's because this is a federal trial, and in a federal trial, cameras are not allowed in the courtroom. And because those cameras are not allowed in the courtroom, then our reporter has to be in the courtroom taking notes, getting the information, and then relaying it back to us, either via text or when he's able to actually get outside and do a live report to give you the context of everything that he saw and heard while he was in the courtroom. We can't show you what's happening live because of that reason. We can only relay that information as it comes down. Now, once the session is over, once all the verdicts are read, then Desmond Nugent will join us live and will give you a breakdown even more and some clarity and some clarification and an idea of what the courtroom felt like and what Dr. Sanjeev Kumar's reactions have been to these counts that he's now been charged guilty with. Again, we're still expecting a partial verdict. We were told it was a partial verdict that would come out. And so it could be a mixed verdict, or it could be that they do not have verdicts, have not come to a decision on some of these counts. A mixed verdict usually means there's some guilty, some not guilty. A partial verdict will lead you to believe that some of these counts they could not come to terms on. And if that's the case, then it'll be interesting to see how the judge handles those counts which the jury could not come to a decision on. All right, let's get back to the timeline of events and kind of how this all happened and where we're at this point in time and how we got to here. Again, this all started in February when he was initially charged. Dr. Sanjeev Kumar was initially charged with several charges. Again, he's facing 46 right now, but some of those had been dropped at one point. In April, a judge allowed him to reopen and continue practicing, but he had to do that under specific conditions that were outlined by the court at that point in time. And then in October, all of the sexual charges against him were then dismissed at that point in time. And once those charges were dismissed, he was left with the 46 counts that he currently faces right now. The trial actually didn't begin until December. And again, you had Christmas break and New Year's holiday in the time frame of this trial taking place. So that's part of the reason why this trial feels like it has lasted a long time. Right before New Year's Eve, on the Tuesday before New Year's Eve, we know that the judge had told the jury that if they didn't reach a verdict by that Tuesday, that they would be off until the following Monday. So they didn't actually deliberate on that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then they came back on Monday, which was couple of days ago, and started deliberating again. And then here we are on Wednesday with them having reached a verdict. We have a live shot outside of the federal courthouse that we'll take as soon as Desmond Nugent is ready. But at this point in time, he's still in the courtroom trying to get those counts. And so I'm gonna go through some of this, and right now, just so you have the information, right now we'll have to specify what some of these charges go to. Again, counts 1 through 32, he was found guilty. On count 33, he was found guilty. On count 34, there was no verdict reached. On count 35, he was found guilty. On counts 36 and 37, there was no unanimous decision reached on those two counts. Count 38, he was found guilty. Count 39, again, no unanimous decision. Counts 40 and 41, found guilty as well. Counts 42 and 43, another no unanimous decision reached there. And then counts 44 through 46, guilty verdicts as well. So that ends up to as being 8 additional guilty verdicts that Dr. Sanjeev Kumar is facing. Yes, 8 additional guilty verdicts to go with the 32. So a total of 40 guilty verdicts at this point in time. 40 guilties of the 46 charges that he was facing. Of the 46, there was 1 that was a no verdict and 5 that were no unanimous decisions. That's where the partial verdict comes in. As we told you a few minutes ago, the jury had announced that they had reached a partial verdict, and that's exactly what this means. They were not able to come to a unanimous decision on several of those charges. 5 of those charges were labeled as no unanimous decision, and 1 of those charges was labeled as no verdict reached at all. But again, 40 of the 46 charges, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar has been found guilty of those. We do know the first 16 were reusing single-use medical devices. We are pretty sure that the following 16, because he was guilty on 16 and then 17 through 32, was rebranding reused single-use devices. Do need to get some clarification on how the last 14 verdicts came out. Is it, which 4 and which 10, how they were broken up? Because there were 4 counts of improper handling of medical devices and 10 counts of healthcare fraud. As we get some clarification onto which of those counts go with each verdict, and we'll be able to relay that to you as well. But I can tell you that he has been found guilty on 40 of 46 charges so far at this point in time, as that partial verdict was read. When we started, we said that it hadn't been labeled as a mixed verdict. It had been labeled as a partial verdict, and that's the reason why. Typically, a mixed verdict has guilties and not guilties in it. A partial verdict means that the jury could not come to unanimous decisions on all of those charges. And that's exactly what we've seen here. They were able to come up with guilty verdicts on 40 of the 46, but they had 1 charge that was a no verdict and 5 charges that they were able to say no unanimous decision. Lauren Turman is joining us in the studio. She's in the studio right now. I know we'll get to her here in just a minute as she's going to help us weave through some of this right now. I think the producers are trying to reach Lauren. I hear you guys talking right now, but Lauren is over here at this point in time as well. We'll get to her in just a second as soon as you guys are able to make contact with her. But let me break down again as we go through those charges and what we've been able to learn at this point in time. We can tell you that there are again, 40 guilty verdicts at this point. 6 of those charges have not been found with a verdict at all. 1 was no verdict, and 5 were listed as no unanimous decision. Again, you can't see in the courtroom right now because it's a federal trial and the cameras are not allowed in a federal trial. Because of that, we're having to relay this information from Desmond Nugent, who's been in the courtroom for several days. He's been in there all day yesterday and in there all day today. He was in there for several days last week as well. So Desmond is hearing these firsthand, taking notes and relaying those to us, and then we are relaying them to you as we get them. Again, let's take one more look at those charges before we're joined by Lauren Turman, who's going to help us break some of this stuff down. 16 counts of reusing single-use devices. There was another 16 counts of rebranding reused single-use devices, 4 counts of improper handling of medical equipment, and then 10 counts of healthcare fraud. We do have the verdicts for the first 32 counts. Those were guilty. We also have verdicts for the final 14. We just aren't sure how those are broken up just yet. And as we get clarification on which counts go with which verdicts, then we'll be able to lay those out for you in a little bit more clarity. Are we ready to go to Lauren Turman at this point in time? All right, let's go ahead and get joined now by ABC 24's Lauren Turman, who joins us now in the studio. Lauren, I know you've been following this case for a long time as well. Thanks for joining us.
That's right, Ruben, and you just went over a lot of that verdict there, the partial verdict that's coming in now. A lot of those counts having to do with 33 through 46, which is broken down into 2 specific parts, the adulteration of hysteroscopes and healthcare fraud. Now, that's not really surprising at this point. I'm going to walk you through some things. I've got my notes here because there are some really important takeaways that I want everybody to make sure they have here. But that kind of difference of the verdict is not really surprising because the jury has come in quite a few times to ask a lot of questions, specifically about hysteroscopes, which are minimally invasive devices that are used specifically to help treat some uterus-related problems, and specifically with some abdominal bleeding. We've got some other things that have to do with infertility. So those devices are minimally invasive, but obviously are often used at the gynecologist to treat specific sets of problems there. But the jury did come in quite a few times to ask questions about hysteroscopes, specifically which ones were used in the 2024 FBI raid of Dr. Kumar's office. Now, before we get into some of those details, I wanted to walk you through a bit more of what we heard specifically during this trial, which has now lasted up to this point for 38 days. It started on December 1st, so quite an extensive amount of time, obviously with a couple of breaks in between for the holidays, to really take in a lot of information and for the jury to weigh the counts at this point. So what I first want to start by telling you is more about what some of the former assistants to Dr. Kumar really talked about and recounted as they testified against him. They talked a lot about some of the medical practices that were used and pretty regular within his office, about how they constantly reused single-use devices, how they were taught to put them in some kind of solution or sometimes wash them off. Dr. Kumar, when he took the stand, opposed a lot of that, saying that he never really received any complaints from other doctors that he might have referred patients to, or from his medical staff, that this was something that was a common practice. But a lot of his staffing saying this was something that they didn't really know any better to look out for, that the reuse of these devices wasn't something that they were told wasn't a common practice. Now, again, a lot of questions were asked during this trial about the hysteroscopes and about some of the other specific medical devices that were used in here. But again, a lot of the difference of what is coming from this jury has to do with the hysteroscopes and has to do with healthcare fraud. Specifically, a large part of this had to do with the billing practices. There was a point that came up here about a $40 million billing from Medicare, especially saying that Dr. Kumar had benefited financially from a lot of his patients and from a lot of that billing. His team, of course, opposed that. When he took the stand, they said a lot of times that they did not believe that this was something that was true or factual. Now, of course, you did mention earlier, Ruben, that he was not cross-examined by the prosecution in any of this. And we heard from Kumar's defense attorney saying that to them, that really showed something that was a good sign. But obviously, a lot of these guilty verdicts for these charges that are coming in don't show that. That confidence that was there obviously wasn't really relayed enough to the jury for them to come or be swayed in a different direction. So again, lots of different charges here. I also talked to some of the victims in this case, some of the former patients that allegedly went to Dr. Kumar's office, one of which I talked to several times over the course of last year. Her name is Corinne Oliver. She went to Dr. Kumar for several years. She's told me that when we talked, she experienced a lot of difficulties coming from some of his practice and some of the medical advice that he provided there. She said that he prescribed her cancer medication when she did not in fact have cancer. She said after she saw him that she was not able to eat, she wasn't able to process things the same, was not able to sleep or do many of the things that she didn't have difficulty with over the years. But after the first time we visited her, the FBI actually reached out to her and said that they would take her to a therapist, would recommend her to go into a different kind of therapy or alternative therapy to what she may had already received. And she said that helped her a lot. The second time we caught up with her, she told me that she was able to eat again. She was able to start sleeping. She was healthier. I could visibly see that she had gained weight. So she felt a lot better. But this is just one of the examples that we had heard from in this past year. I also spoke with another former patient of his over the phone who recounted a lot of similar incidences, who talked a lot about some of the other pain that she had experienced at that time as well. So obviously the difference of opinion here, the split in the decisions that the jury has come to, there was a lot of deliberation, a lot of back and forth, lots of questions being asked at this time as well, as we're finally starting to see a bit more of what they've been deliberating on, and as they're getting some of those questions answered or trying to decide one way or another which direction things have gone in. Obviously, majority of that verdict is guilty at this point. I'll send it back to you, Ruben.
Thank you very much, Lauren. That was a much needed breakdown. You've been covering this case from the very beginning, and I know you've spoken with victims and you've spoken with attorneys as well, and so really appreciate the insight. Let's pull up the screen that shows the counts, because I'm going to go through these at this point in time. We've got some clarification for you, so we're going to break down the guilties and the guilties and no decisions as well. So he has 16 counts, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, 16 counts of reusing single-use devices. So he was on the 16 counts of adulteration of single-use devices. He was found guilty on all 16 counts. On the 16 counts of misbranding of reprocessed single-use devices, guilty on all 16 of those counts. So just like we were prepared for in the beginning. On the 4 counts of adulteration of hysteroscopes, he was cleared. There you go on your screen, and it's kind of tight to read those two, so I'll go through that for you. We'll redo that for you here in a second. Cleared on 2 counts. He's guilty on 2 counts rather, and a no unanimous verdict on 2 counts. That's on the 4 counts of improper handling of hysteroscopes. On 2 of those counts, again, he was found guilty. On 2 other counts, there was no unanimous verdict. On the 10 counts of healthcare fraud, he was found guilty on 6 counts of that. There was no unanimous decision on the remaining 4 counts. So that goes to what we were talking about. That means that there's a mistrial. According to the judge, there will be a mistrial on the counts that the jury could not agree on. So there was 1 no verdict and 5 no unanimous decisions. It's important to note from our Desmond Nugent, who is in the courtroom, Dr. Kumar is facing more than 100 years, according to the government, is what Desmond Nugent is telling us at this point in time. Again, so for the breakdown for you, as we've been following this case for weeks at this point and been following the jury deliberations for days, waiting for that jury deliberation to come out, we finally do have the verdicts. And here's what we have. 16 guilty on all 16 counts of reusing single-use devices. Guilty on the 16 counts of rebranding reused single-use devices. Guilty on 2 counts of improper handling of hysteroscopes. There was a no unanimous decision on the other 2 counts. He was found guilty on 6 of the 10 counts of healthcare fraud, with no unanimous decision on the other 4 counts. So what that means is that he was found guilty on 40 of the 46 counts, and that there will be a mistrial declared for the 6 remaining counts, that there was not a guilty verdict, or there was no verdict reached at all. So on those 6 that there was no verdict reached at all, there was no unanimous decision, and that is the reason for the partial verdict that you've gotten today, as opposed to a mixed verdict, which would be some guilties and not guilties. The partial verdict means there were certain parts of the charges that the jury could not agree on. And instead of a full mistrial, they were able to agree on charges, on verdicts on some of those charges, and disagree on verdicts on other charges, which is where the partial verdict comes in. Now, according to Desmond Nugent, who's in the courtroom with us right now, he's been in the courtroom for us. He's the eyes and ears of this for us right now. Dr. Kumar could be facing over 100 years in prison with these charges that he's now been found guilty of. It's important to note we can't take you inside the courtroom again because it is a federal trial. So we have to get that information from Desmond Nugent, who's in the courtroom, and then relays it to us at this point in time, and then we are relaying it to you. So just to recap, there has been a verdict reached in the federal trial of Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. He was facing 46 charges in this trial. The jury took 5 days to deliberate, but eventually came out with a partial verdict. On that partial verdict, there are 40 guilties and 6 no unanimous decisions. Those 6 no unanimous decisions become mistrials. The 40 guilties he will now have to be sentenced for at this point in time. Now, we are also hearing that it will be April until Dr. Kumar is actually forced to go into custody. There will be appeals happening because of this. It looks like sentencing is going to be taking place April the 9th after this verdict has now been read. Now, we were joined by Lauren Turman here just a few minutes ago, who really gave a strong breakdown of not just a timeline of events, but some of the details in this case that maybe you hadn't known or maybe you didn't realize just because she's been covering the case so heavily from the very beginning. And now that we've reached a verdict, we want to go back to Lauren here in just a couple of seconds to kind of get her take now that she's been able to hear that complete verdict. Lauren, I know you were covering this case from the very beginning, and now that you've heard the verdict, again, 40 guilties, 6 mistrials, 6 verdicts, 6 no unanimous decisions that result in a mistrial. Let me get that correct. What's your take on this, on all of this now that you've seen this kind of from beginning to end?
Well, Ruben, it's not necessarily a surprise, especially as you mentioned earlier, as I mentioned earlier, with the amount of questions that the jury had asked in this case. It's very technical. There's a lot of devices here that generally people aren't really aware of, a lot of terminology here that is very difficult to get through without the direction of a lawyer or a medical professional in this case. And so hearing about that guilty verdict for 40 of those counts is not necessarily surprising, given the nature and the heaviness of what Dr. Sanjeev Kumar is being charged with in this particular case. And hearing about the potential 100 years sentencing that the government has told Desmond Nugent that Dr. Kumar could potentially have, we won't know, as you just said, until that April sentencing comes around. But that's not necessarily surprising because of what we've heard from other lawyers who are not connected to this case. I spoke with Art Horn about this. He's gone through a lot of other cases that are similar to this, and he said the question here is about the time, but also about Dr. Kumar's medical licensing, right? Because even with a guilty verdict, he may be able to appeal to Tennessee's medical board and potentially at some point have his license reinstated or a portion of his practice reinstated at some time. I know that's surprising for a lot of people to hear. It was also surprising initially that when these charges initially came down early last year, that Dr. Kumar was still allowed to practice in much of his capacity that we've seen here so far. He was allowed to service some of his patients. He was allowed to touch certain paperwork and documentation, and that came as a shock to a lot of people. So hearing this in terms of the gravity and depth of what he has gone through, of what these charges are against him, about the specificity of each of these medical devices that we've been hearing about here so far, it is not surprising that this is such an extensive potential sentencing, that he could get as much time as he could potentially get as well. And because of the victims that we've talked to, because the FBI reached out to at least one of the victims that we talked to in this case, obviously this is being taken very seriously, and they are trying to connect people in the right capacity with the right therapist and other medical professionals who may be able to help them. So hearing about this is not necessarily a surprise to many of us who have been following this case, but specifically hearing about each and every count, and that the jury was not necessarily able to reach every single charge and make a determination on every single count in a unanimous fashion has been, a little bit surprising here, but also because of how specific everything is, it is to be weighed and talked a little bit more in terms of the gravity of the situation and this case here so far. Ruben?
No, Lauren, don't go anywhere. Here's what I'd like to do. We're going to listen. You mentioned Art Horn. You mentioned that we'd spoken to Art Horn and kind of some of the specifics he gave you during that conversation. Let's listen to what he told us when we spoke to this defense attorney, Art Horn, about this case. Now, again, he's not involved in this case, but we were just getting his opinion in a case like this.
It may be a situation where we just give up his license and he be allowed in 5 or 10 years to come back and ask to be reinstated as part of a settlement with the medical board.
Now, Lauren, to your point that you were just making, that there's a whole nother layer to this that involves his medical license. So I just wanted to play that sound and get your reaction, since you had just mentioned, you kind of touched on that point.
Yes, definitely. In terms of what Art was just saying there, that actually came as quite a surprise to me to even hear there was a possibility of reinstatement in this case, whether or not a guilty verdict was reached in this trial. Because when you're hearing things of this gravity with so many different medical devices, with so many different people involved, former assistants, doctors, TennCare officials who testified in this case, the even potential or possibility of reinstatement if he can appeal to the medical board and essentially prove to them that his license should be kept, or part of his practice should be kept, or maybe there should be some kind of a transfer of responsibility there, would be quite surprising to a lot of people who may be just tuning into this case. So that was really the first time I was hearing that kind of analysis. But again, if you've been following things here, there have been some shocks in terms of the capacity that Dr. Kumar has still been allowed to practice in during this case, with him being able to practice after those charges came and before the trial actually started, to now hearing about the potential of his medical license being reinstated if he can find any way to appeal to Tennessee's medical board, or if they find any way that he should be reinstated or his licensing or practice should be kept in the manner in which it is right now. Ruben?
Yeah, we're going to take a look at these counts, but I think it's important to note we can't forget about the victims, right, Lauren, during this case. And I know that you guys have spoken with some of the victims. I want to let you do this portion, since you guys were the ones who were speaking with the victims during this case. I know you spoke with one of those, correct?
I did, and I spoke about her a couple of minutes ago. Corinne Oliver. She was a former patient of Dr. Kumar's. She went to him for several years. She talked to me about the pain that she had felt. She couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep. She said he prescribed her cancer medication that she didn't even need because she didn't have cancer. I want you to take a listen to more of what she had to say the second time that we spoke with her, when we saw her in a lot more healthy of a state than when we initially met her.
I cry every day, just devastated about what happened to me, and I just couldn't move forward. He gave me chemotherapy when I did not have any kind of cancer, and it nearly killed me.
All right, when you hear that, that kind of puts things in perspective, right? Because sometimes you can get deep into these trials and you can get far removed from the victims when you're waiting for these verdicts to come down. So just what's your initial thoughts and your take after having had that conversation with her?
The first time that I met Corinne was definitely one of the most emotional days I've ever had in my career working this job. She talked about the extensive pain that she felt. She couldn't get any words out without crying. She actually, when we first met her, she didn't want her face to be on camera, and so we had to shoot it behind her and talk to her about it, but she couldn't get through any words really without being choked up in the amount of time that we had spoken with her. She just kept on talking about the pain she was experiencing, how some days she wasn't able to get out of bed, she wasn't able to walk, she had to rely on some other family and friends to come and take care of her after going to see Dr. Kumar. And her experience, again, was not alone. I talked to a couple of other former patients of his who all talked about some similar experiences that they had, and talked about the importance of people knowing the pain that they had gone through during that time, and that they had all had very similar mirrored experiences. Now, the first time I spoke with Corinne, I also spoke with an attorney who's dealt with a lot of medical cases, specifically some high-profile medical cases that had to deal with things like sexual assault, things like mistreatment of patients, fraud, other other things. And she said in a lot of cases like this, there are the experiences of these people who never feel like their stories can get out there or their voices can be heard. But when they finally are able to get to a point where they feel comfortable enough talking about it, there are many federal agencies that tend to swoop in and ask them about their experience, analyze it, set them up with the right people so that they can get more in touch and back to being in a healthier state than where they were before they met that practitioner, in this case, Dr. Kumar. So just seeing her again, being able to touch base with her again at the end of this year was great because she was so much healthier, just visibly, than what we saw her initially. And she was finally able to get some of the medical help that she needed after seeing him. Ruben.
All right, thanks a lot, Lauren. Now just stand by. I know we're going to have some reaction when we get hear from Desmond Nugent, who's been in the courtroom. Let's definitely get you caught back up on what's happening right now. If you're just joining us, a verdict has been reached, a partial verdict in the case of Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. Let's take a look at those counts, and we'll tell you kind of how that broke down as the jury was able to come back with a partial verdict. Now, the difference between a mixed verdict and a partial verdict would be a mixed verdict typically has guilty and not guilty in it. This partial verdict means they just could not come to agreement on some of the counts. So here's how it breaks down. On the 16 counts of reusing single-use devices, Dr. Kumar was found guilty. On the 16 counts of rebranding reused single-use devices, he was found guilty of those 16 counts as well. On the 4 counts of improper handling of hysteroscopes, he was found guilty on 2 of those counts, and there was no unanimous decision reached on 2 of those other counts. On the 10 counts of healthcare fraud, he was found guilty on 6 of the 10 counts of healthcare fraud, but there was no unanimous decision reached on the 4 remaining counts of healthcare fraud, for a total of 40 guilty verdicts in this case, and 6 no unanimous decisions, which there become mistrials. Those charges are now classified as mistrials in this case, according to the judge. Dr. Kumar is now facing up to or over 100 years in prison with these 40 guilty verdicts. Now, it's important to note as well, he will not be taken into custody immediately. He will not go into custody until sentencing, and sentencing is scheduled for April the 9th. So he has some time before sentencing. That's going to be allotted for all the appeals that are about to be filed. There are going to be a lot of appeals filed on his behalf. Almost undoubtedly, that's where that time frame comes from. If you're wondering why he's not being sentenced tomorrow, 46 counts, a lot of paperwork, a lot of stuff for his attorneys to go through if they decide to appeal. This is going to be an ongoing case in that regard. We will have to continue to follow it and see what happens with appeals, and then what happens with sentencing, and then as well what happens if he is able to get out of jail or prison, and then is he able to keep his license? All of those are questions that will have to be answered at a later date. But right now, we can tell you that in this case that has lasted over a month, in this trial that has lasted over a month, there's finally been a verdict reached, even though it is a partial verdict at this time, with 40 guilties and 6 no decision reached, which therein become mistrials on those 46 charges. The timeline for this, and we've gone through this a couple of times, but it's important to note of kind of how we got to where we're at. This all started back in February when Dr. Kumar was initially charged with dozens of counts. When the FBI, again, Lauren mentioned this earlier, the FBI raided and seized evidence, and then he was charged with dozens of counts, not just the counts that you currently see right now. And throughout the course of this case, there have been several milestones. One of the milestones was he was allowed to reopen his clinic, and then eventually the trial started in December. I believe we have Desmond Nugent live right now. Desmond has been in the courtroom every day pretty much since this trial began, since deliberations began. He's been monitoring this. Desmond, we just went through the verdict itself, but can you tell us a little bit about what the courtroom environment and atmosphere was like while the verdict was being read?
Ruben, I can tell you right now that the courtroom was nearly packed. There was a lot of people inside. I will say that Dr. Kumar himself, you can see he was a little bit antsy. You can see he's a little bit nervous prior to the actual verdict being read. And then when the verdict was actually being read, when the jury, or rather Judge Knowles Folks, was reading the actual verdict, you can see there was a little bit of somber, there's a little bit of disbelief from just hearing the verdict. 40 guilty verdicts and 6 no decisions or no unanimous decisions from the actual jury. What I will say is throughout this particular deliberation that the the jury has been deliberating for 5 days, and they also say that they were just tired of actually deliberating after 5 days. They also say that as far as more time, it wouldn't even matter. And so at this particular time, they're just hoping to be able to move forward now that a decision has been made. And so we are expected to be able to speak with Dr. Kumar's attorney at 4:30, and we'll give you more updates from what they're going to do next.
Ears of this, so don't go anywhere yet. You're the eyes and ears of this for us as you've been in the courtroom as those verdicts were being read. You mentioned that the jurors had questions and that they were just tired. You were in the courtroom, I believe, on the day when they came to the judge with several questions about evidence and about what would happen if they couldn't reach a verdict. What's been your feeling of, as you've watched the jury go back and forth, what's been your take on how they've gone through this process to your point now that they say they're just tired? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, Ruben, I do know that some of those questions raised, actually there were 2 questions that were raised and the same question that were raised last week. And one of those questions were, well, if we can't come to a decision, according to Judge Lippman, if they can't come to a decision, will they be considered as a hung jury? And last Tuesday, Judge Lippman informed the jury that they would not be considered a hung jury, and so they had to stick it out. And so when it came to Judge Folks today, he said that you guys have an obligation to fulfill and that you have to come to some kind of unanimous decision, even if it's ones that you can't agree on. So that's why they was able to come with 40 guilty verdicts and 6 no unanimous decisions. And so again, the defense is trying to regroup at this time to see what steps they can move forward. We do know that sentencing will be April 9th, 2026 at 9:30 a.m.
Or I give you a quick breather, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to see if you happen to remember or just notice off the top. Could you give me the makeup of the jury as far as like men and women? Was it mostly men, mostly women? Was it pretty even? What did that jury makeup look like to you?
Ruben, the makeup of the jury was mostly women, probably ages between 30 and 45, mostly African-American women. From what I remember, again, 12 jurors, mostly women, mostly African-American women.
Desmond, for that. Now, stand by. We will, of course, come back to you here in just a few minutes to get even more reaction. I know you just stepped out of the courtroom, so you're trying to gather your notes as well. Let's get everybody caught back up on where we're at in the trial of Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. The verdict has reached the jury has reached a partial verdict in this case, and let me give you that partial verdict, and then we'll put a bow on this for right now. As we bring up those charges, we can tell you what the verdict has been on this case. 16 guilty. He was found guilty on 16 counts of reusing single-use devices. Found guilty on 16 counts of rebranding reused single-use devices. He was found guilty of 2 of the 4 counts of improper handling of hysteroscopes. 2 of those counts, though, there was no verdict reached. He was found guilty on 6 of the 10 counts of healthcare fraud. On the other 4 counts, no verdict was reached. On those 6 counts that no verdict was reached, those are now being pronounced as handled as mistrials. All right, so we have covered this from beginning to almost the end. The sentencing will be April 9th. We will continue to cover that. We will have much more on this coming up on your ABC 24 News at 5 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us again. A partial verdict reached in the case of Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. You can find much more about this on our website as well, abc24.com.
Continue with us and watch free now on the 24 Plus app everywhere you stream.